has raised a huge number of challenging and unprecedented problems the government has had to grapple with, and they've had to create countless schemes and programmes to support us, to keep us safe, and now having to find ways to unravel it all, whilst the playing field continually changes around them. These have been necessary responses to questions that the pandemic has asked of them, and they've had to do it in record time. For schools, there isn't an easy answer. Nothing will ever be able to cover, even in the short term, for the amazing job that teachers across Mansfield and Warsop do week in, week out. With schools being closed, we knew that children's learning would suffer. We knew that ever-tightening restrictions were going to make it impossible to hold exams. We can look back now and say maybe it could have been different, but at the time that was the widely accepted truth. We must close the schools, we must plan for an alternative system of assessment. The Ofqual formula was an imperfect solution to an impossible problem. In reality, in hindsight, it wasn't fair. It wasn't right that those from lower income areas had their grades disproportionately affected. It wasn't right that clearly for a child to get a U for an exam they were never allowed to sit. It was hugely problematic. But hindsight is a wonderful thing. Perhaps it could have been done differently. But government employs experts in the form of Ofqual to manage these processes. And at the time, Ofqual were offering assurances to ministers that this would be okay. They've since apologised for getting it wrong. They too are only human, and every other nation of our United Kingdom had come to the same conclusion. But what this says to me on a broader level is the problematic nature of these structures of government by kind of quangocracy, if I can pronounce the word, quangocracy, that we've had for many decades now. That does blur the lines of accountability and decision-making, and it's something that I hope this government will address over the course of this Parliament. Well, I was glad that Ofqual agreed for teacher-assessed grades to be awarded to pupils who were unable to sit exams. This was the correct way to proceed, given where we'd ended up. But it's still not perfect. It throws up questions about grade inflation, impacts on universities in future years, but we eventually got to the right place. I'd like to say, Mr Speaker, that I know firsthand, Madam Deputy Speaker, I know firsthand from my own experience how long and hard ministers and officials in the DfE have worked to try and rectify these problems. I know how many phone calls the HE Minister, for example, has made to universities to try and get them to go back and make more offers and to support students. I know how much time ministers have offered me to raise concerns and ideas and issues, and I'm very grateful for that. I want to thank them for that. Nothing in a pandemic is perfect, and though what's gone on has been incredibly frustrating, I've seen how committed the department has been to try and make it work, and for that I think we should all be grateful. The key thing now is that lessons must be learned from these challenges. Let's look at the relationship between FE and HE. Let's look at the admissions process. Let's look at those government structures around decision-making and make sure we do these things better in the future. But we also now need to draw a line and to move forward in the best interests of our children and young people, which I know the Secretary of State is committed to doing. Yeah.